Hey, thanks for joining me with another conversation. I'm here with David Clancy. David, it's been a minute, buddy.
Brett, been a few years since we had a really long conversation, but we also caught up over a drink or two and some Tex-Mex not too long ago. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Yeah, good to see you too. Guys, for context, just so if you're a fly on the wall, I recently bumped into David most recently when we were doing an in-service with the Houston Texans. David, if you have listened to the bio, and we'll get into some of that here as well, has a decorated background across sports performance, consulting, sports medicine, physiotherapy, you name it. But one of the reasons I wanted to have him on the show, and David, just talking to you too, right, as we talked about, hey, we'll touch on some of those things, but we also want to talk about some things that a lot of people are just going through right now. And this is kind of how, with your permission, I'd like to start the discussion. A lot of people recently have reached out to us, mainly because I transitioned out of strength and conditioning and I started doing different stuff in different industries and kind of said, hey, I'm at a point where I'm thinking about either making a change in my career, taking a change in my profession, for whatever reason. I mean, and that's a very natural thing. People get into their 30s and their 40s and they start realizing that their passions either vary or maybe they're staying in the same field, but they want to, kind of get a different take on it or a different lens. I would just love to know, and there's a broad runway here, so take it where you want. What made you get into the field that you're in and contextualize that? What made you chase certain passions? How have your interests evolved? And then we'll get into more specifics later on, but just talk to me about how you chose what you even do now and ground that.
It's a great question. And I think I can also say to that, I'm not sure if this is where I'm going to stay, right? So yeah, I think it's very fair to say that I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now. There's passion. I love it. I feel I can add value, but it could change in 5 years. And you kind of touched on something that's interesting. And I think about it a lot. And I have conversations around it a lot that, sports medicine, physio, yes, and kind of identified as that for so long. But ultimately, I was curious about other things, Brett. I was curious about what business was. I was curious about dealing with staff, not just athletes. I was curious about what's a podcast. So, I think that's a big thing for me, kind of following my curiosities over the last 5-6 years. And even now I'm in a space, kind of two spaces where, I'm probably back to something I really think I can add value to. I enjoy it. Probably see myself in the next 5-6 years here. But I think anyone that's looking to try something different, I think just, ask yourself the question why and kind of why now and what's the reason that you're interested in doing something different. And it's okay to not know as well. And it's okay to try something and mess up and try again something different. I did that.
Yeah, it's good advice. I think the one thing, and it's my job to sometimes be devil's advocate on this and speak on behalf of the audience. And I can jump in here too if you want to make it a collaborative thing. What some people would say is, well, listen, and I know you could speak to this because you're a father, right? Like I have kids and I'm scared to get into an unpredictable business, or I'm scared about the unknown. And I know I have one client and it's very real, right? We can all relate to it. He's like, I don't know that I can afford to make the wrong decision. Whether that's me going into being, this is him talking, an entrepreneur, or me going into an adjacent field. I feel like because of my son or my daughter or, whatever, maybe they have a sick family member, I'm scared. And it's tough for me because I don't want to put you on the spot with this, but I want your take. It's always tough for me to answer that because what I want to say is like, yeah, brother, we all feel the same way, right? There's no certainty in any job. Even if you make $300K a year, you can get fired tomorrow. Nobody ever has as much certainty as they think. But it's kind of like, what's the price of being miserable or feeling stuck? Because there is a level of pragmatism, isn't there? To like, you've got to figure out how to make it support. But there's also a level of long-term fulfillment. What are your thoughts on any aspect of that?
I'm pretty lucky that I went into a bunker with my missus who does something completely different, right? So she's civil service, public banking sector for 15 years, right? So if you look at where I've gone to a world where it could be a great month and then it can be a not so great month, right? And with 2 young kids, you're mindful of, you've got a house, you got to pay for bills, right? Very fortunate that and it wasn't by design. It's not why I chose her, right? But
wait, you chose her because she's loaded, is what I'm hearing you say. She's loaded.
Read between the lines there, but no.
Where's she at? Get her on here. I want to meet her.
She's just downstairs with the kids. No knowing that, and that wasn't always the thing. I mean, I had a steady job with certain hours, etc., etc. But now my world is so far away from that. Like I don't have, I don't have a state pension, etc., etc. Right? I don't know what my month by month income is, and there's so much stress with that. Like you don't know what's happening. But a huge advantage I have is, well, my wife has a pretty steady state with what she does, which affords me the opportunity to try and iterate a little bit more. So it's worked out for us. Now, I'm sure if you were both in, say, my world and, I didn't have someone like my wife, then that adds another, layer of challenge, right? And kind of how are you covering your stuff? So, if I go away for a few days, knowing it might land business or it might not, it might cost money. I'm lucky knowing, well, my wife is still back there doing something. It's not what we want forever. I want it to change, but for now, it's where we play,
Yeah, and I hope for those of you listening, what you should not take away from that, because definitely what David's not saying, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not hearing David say he's absolved from risk just because his wife has a stable income,
Absolutely
right?
Not.
There's secondary consequences, because even if you have a down year, that puts stress on her, then that puts stress on the relationship and the kids. So, and I say that, David, just because there are going to be some people that would say, yeah, well, I don't have that. So, and I try to remind people, like, we can all come up with some version of that. I know I could, like, I'm single. I can't rely on a secondary income, but that doesn't make me have any inherently more or less risk than you. It's just different. It's different things that we have to navigate.
And I think to that 100%, I constantly put myself under pressure to deliver and do well, right? I mean, I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and it was that whole, reticular activating thing. Once you see a buggy, all you see is a buggy. Have you seen a red car tonight? I haven't, but then all you see is a red car. And I think, not to try to be the optimist here, but I think it's true. Whilst it's a pretty challenging time in the world and there's a lot going on and there's a lot of uncertainty, with that, there's also lots of opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunity to be creative and to think about how can you generate and what does that look like. So I would also challenge people out there that whilst, it can be hard, especially if you're trying to build your own thing, but with that comes a lot of road to potentially find opportunities, but a lot of it can be on you,
Great point. And the core question here, and I'm going to ask the question first so you have it in your brain and then kind of color it, so there's more context here, is the question is going to be how you have filtered out some of the opportunities you've engaged in, because sometimes people can get overwhelmed by that. So hold on to that for a moment. And just for those of you listening, again, I never want to assume you've heard the bio. I mean, this is a guy that held a research position at Royal College Surgeons Ireland. He's written a book. He's worked as a consultant. He's worked in so many different aspects. And with that, the point isn't to position Dave as some kind of know-it-all, because that's not what he is or tries to be. It's a multi-passionate person that likely felt the same overwhelm many of you do trying to find your space. So, David, with that, and it's totally okay, by the way, for you to just be like, hey, I didn't have any way to filter it. I just kind of followed where it took me. But how did you decide? I mean, you've done so many things. What is a framework or a filter you use to kind of figure out which thing to pursue and which thing not to pursue?
A lot of trial and error over the last couple of years, and a lot of trying to understand if this is going to work or if this is not going to work. I mean, when I came back from London, went into a sports medicine clinic. It bombed out after 18 months. Then I tried something else, kind of worked for a couple of years, wasn't so great on the bank account, right? So I think a lot of it is, a model I lean into a lot now, Brett. It's very simple. Derek Sivers, right? Hell yes or no. And to be honest, you hear people write pros and cons, but for me, more often than not in the last 18 months, if something's coming to me, I'll kind of go, this really has to hit me in the head, the heart. It has to make sense for loads of reasons to want to step in and do it. Otherwise, it's taking time and energy away from something else that I'm currently doing. And I think,
good point.
Yeah, just last thing too, like I've always been known as someone that's always been juggling loads of balls, right? I said curiosity. And
Hold on. Can we timestamp that? You've been known as somebody that's juggling loads of balls. There's some good locker room humor there. Yeah. I want that timestamped. I want that put on a loop. Yeah. And that is going to be our primary social media marketing. Yeah. All right. I had to get one locker room joke in here.
You're talking to an Irish guy. But just on that, like my mom would say the same thing, right? Gee, you're always doing loads of things. And I'd say, yeah. And I'm okay with it. But I do think a big hindrance and where it's not always a great thing, right? To be interested in doing loads of great things, and is there not always great things? Because if you do multiple things, you can't always do great work. And I'm always wrestling with that. Like today, I'm wrestling with that. So even if someone has opportunities and, you've got 3 or 4 things that you think could be really, really, good for you, knowing and figuring out what to actually say no to give yourself a chance for it to be really great work is always a challenge for me.
Yeah. One of those things to that point, I'm glad you brought up the hell yes, hell no thing. That can change a lot over the years, right? Like when I first started in strength and conditioning, right? It was a hell yes for me if, a state clinic or something reached out and I had an opportunity to get on a stage and share with people and connect. Now, if I have to decide between doing that or an organization wants to bring us in for a 2-day, I can't just look at the time intensive nature of it. I got to look on what the return on investment is at this point, right? If I go to a state clinic, which I'll still do those things, people reach out, but like I have to think, okay, what allows me to make the most potential, like the biggest difference here, right? And for me, that tends to be things that are deeper, right? It's why I chose, and there's going to be a question here for you too. It's why I chose to write a book. A book can make a deep impact. It's why I choose to do typically in-services or 2-day conferences over keynotes that can make a deeper impact. And even if I have to choose one keynote versus another keynote, I have to think what's my current audience? What's the message I want to get out? What's the likelihood of that platform, of whoever's running that clinic or conference, for them to help me get that message out? Or is it going to be transactional? So I think to your point, people really do have to think, like, what is that filter? What are you trying to achieve right now? Because it's very rarely just going to be the monetary side of things. Of course, that matters, but it's going to be reach, depth. Does it feed your soul? All those. Is anything you want to riff off with that? Does that bring some ideas up for you?
Yeah, look, money is great, right? But, if you're doing good work and adding value, the money comes. For me, like you said, spiritual, interesting. For me, a big part of a lot of the work I do, and I hear people across the pond say hokey. For me, what I'm saying is, if I feel like I want to do it in my heart, I'm going to do it. And I think that's something always I'm learning, right? It's not an intellectual thing. It's not a science thing. It's not brain and head. It's actually, I want to do it. I want to get into it because it means something. I think this is important work. You can make a difference. They actually want to do the work. Therefore, it makes absolute sense. And I think that's a huge filter for me these days, that I really try not to make a head decision. I try to make a decision that actually in my gut and heart makes me go, yeah, I think this is hard. I can do it though, and I'd love to do it. And I think if people can get to a space where they can say that, it's a nice place to be. And not that I'm always there, but it's what I'm working on all the time. So when something comes up, I think if you can say, yeah, let's do it for those kind of reasons. And that's what works for me.
So what do you mean? There's no one size fits all framework that everybody should just abide by that gives them the simple answer of what to do and what not to do?
That's going to be in your hyperlink in the workbook at the bottom when we're talking tactics.
Yeah. Right. All right. So let me ask you this, right? And this also goes with, there's so many people out there that, even if they don't switch what they do, they want to look at things that can do adjacent. Right. And there's people that would love to get into consulting or speaking or maybe build an online platform. You've done all these things, and I'm going to give you a choice here, right? You could go to wherever you're most passionate, but I would love to know, how you got in to consulting, or you could take it into, I know you founded the Learning Physiotherapist, which, if I'm correct, is like an online mentoring platform focused on soft skills, career planning, coaching, and professional development. Yeah. How did you start either of those? Because they can seem like monumental tasks to somebody that just right now is thinking, I'd like to do something like that.
The biggest thing is trying to find time, if you're busy, and we're all busy, to think about an idea, right? And wherever that is, like that could be lifting, it could be sauna, it could be, in your shower, it could be whatever, right? But walking without your phone. I think if you have an idea, and we all have ideas, so find a space where you can actually give yourself space to have ideas. And then if you can write it down and think about the smallest thing you can do to get yourself closer to it and try to have a go. So, I mean, the learning physio came off a conversation when I was walking around with a friend of mine in town. We had just had a pint, and then we were kind of going, you know what's kind of missing out there? And it literally came from that. It came from a conversation 8 o'clock in the evening on a weekday when we're just saying, you know what, the people I really admire, they're the people that it's this kind of stuff. It's not the stuff you're taught in college. It's the stuff you learn from experience and working and making mistakes. And that was basically the premise behind how that course was formed, which has kind of shaped a lot of other things over the last couple of years. But I think if anyone is trying to figure out, be it consulting, be it an online cohort thing, be it nurturing a community, be it starting a podcast, well, you need to give yourself time to think of what that thing could be, find the idea, and what's the smallest chunk? Or do you know someone that's done it? Or can you find someone that's doing something and of a scale that is not ridiculously so far out of reach that you can't even relate to it, and start? And it mightn't be perfect, but a start is something.
Yep. No, I agree with that. Have you ever dealt with any kind of, because this is something that comes up. I mean, we've probably done 3 or 4 episodes related to this on the podcast, and guys, we'll put this in the show notes as well as resources for David, but we have this it's a very free workbook on it. But did you ever deal with any kind of imposter syndrome? Well, who's going to want to hear from me? Who's going to want to hear this? Or even, am I going to come off as some kind of know-it-all guru? What if you had any kind of contradictory inner voice, what, if anything, did it constantly kind of say to you?
It's funny, like the know-it-all thing isn't in our nature in Ireland, right? That's not kind of how we're built.
Right.
And that's funny. It comes up a lot, right? That thing. I think the first thing, 1,000%, I can relate to it every single day. Imposter syndrome, right? And you hear about it, and where everyone's kind of bored senseless hearing about it. But I can tell you now that, I turn 40 next year, right? And yeah, some things have gone really well, but I mean, I delivered a workshop 2 weeks ago for a company, and I was walking in going, Jesus, how's this going to go? Like, how am I going to? So I think all that anxiety, all that nervousness, all those questions around, like, can I do it? Do you belong here? Like, will they actually believe me? Will they listen to me? Totally normal. And I mean, when I dipped into the business world after the sports medicine gig, I had that every time, right? So, I think context is important, and knowing how you introduce yourself. I would have thought about that a lot. Like, if I'm going into a certain type of company, I don't start with credentials and badges and I've studied and I'm a physio, blah, blah. They don't care. So I think you need to think about, how do you actually bridge and build connection? What does that look like? And that might be just talking about the Ryder Cup. That might be
that's a good
the
point.
Fact that Europe smashed the States. That might be talking about anything that causes a little bit more of a connection. They don't need to always hear about the other stuff. It doesn't matter half the time. So I think, the imposter thing, all the time. But I think you just get comfortable with it and try not to get too flustered, because we all live it.
Yeah, you start realizing that everybody feels like that, and I think that this is something that where people have to be realistic about, whether it's self-handicapping, right? If that's really the thing they're struggling with, because we live in a day and age where it doesn't matter if it's Tom Cruise, and we're not getting into the Scientology thing. I'm just using somebody as an example, right? Tom Cruise or a certain athlete or something else, like, to think that none of these people have doubts has long been debunked. Yeah. People talk about them on countless platforms. And so I almost kind of gently push back, and I'm like, listen, it's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
We're all going to have self-doubts. We're all going to have this. It's inherently part of our negativity bias that served us well for a very long time on the savannah.
Yeah.
Your brain makes a horrible master, and it's always trying to tell you things that are contradictory or something, because it just wants you to play it safe. You know, it's cognitively expensive to put yourself in positions where you have skin in the game and what have you. And I go, what's the alternative for you to be a narcissist? And I know there's a middle ground there. So I'm not trying to, you know, say it's black and white, but I do think that by and large now it's people, if they're really being honest with themselves, they're kind of looking for a convenient excuse to not put skin in the game because they're scared about what other people are going to say.
And I think that's such a huge point. And that would be my timestamp if I was taking something. Because I think it's the biggest thing. I think if you're trying to do anything, you have to lean in, right? And although it's hard and it's messy and you might feel uncomfortable, that's the magic, right? And it's that initial moment. What can you do to just get yourself into, just have a go? And I think, I mean, when I think of anything I've achieved, anything that's gone pretty well or not so well, there's always that decision, right? And it's always that moment of, just got to do it. Just got to do it. And I think if you look at people that have done well, they've just had that mindset to have a go. They've tried it.
Yeah. So with that, what is something that kind of sits at the nexus of excitement and, you know, something that's a little bit scary for you right now? And that can be something you're currently doing. That can be something that you're going to be taking on in the coming months or the weeks, but act like I know nothing and I'm getting inside that brain of yours. What's something that kind of scares you and excites you right now that you're working on or about to start working on?
Yeah. You know, I don't know if like scared is a funny word. I love a challenge. So that's, you know, I love a challenge. I suppose a big thing for me, right, Brett? And I don't want to talk about it now really, but I have an event coming up in a couple of weeks, right? And there's a part of me, scare, anxiety. I want it to go really well. And I want it
Wait, Juan, I'm going to push on you. And you know I respect you, but this is what people like about this podcast. It's real. Why don't you want to talk about it?
No, we can talk about it, but I thought we might.
No, we are going to talk about it. I want to talk about shit that you actually care about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I know this is why you're on the podcast, and we'll do this in real time. People, I know you're a humble guy. I get all that. You don't want to see self-aggrandizing, self-promoting. But if you give a shit about this thing and you're running an event and there's things in it that go into it, you should want to talk. Like, I'm going to run an event next year and the thing both scares and excites me as well. So I do want to get into what you're passionate about. Nobody here needs to project your own shit onto David. This is something you're passionate about. Let's go. I'm not going to let you not talk about it. Talk about the event and what goes into it and what is exciting. And you should be fearful about it. If you're not fearful at some degree, you don't give a shit enough about it.
Yeah. And I think it's because I give a shit a lot about it. That is the big thing with it. Right. And, you know, we talked about it earlier about the heart. It matters to me for a lot of reasons. And because it matters to me for a lot of personal reasons, it needs to go fucking really well. And, and that's not money. That's not brand. That's not vision. That's not reputation. There's deeper reasons as to why I want it to do well. And I mean, I did one last year and it went well, but I'll never like go like that went really well. I'll be like, yeah, I think that went okay. But now I'm going, well, we're doing it again. So there needs to be another good. It needs to feel good again. So I think, you know, the event is, I put myself under pressure to try to do it again. Back in Dublin, 28th of October. And yeah, I just want it to be a home run because for so many reasons, because there's a lot of people that have helped. It's coming off the back of lots of different things like that course and a book. There's a lot of people that have an interest in it. There's a lot of people trying to support it. I'm trying to create an opportunity to do work off it for like personal reasons, not business reasons. So, there's huge skin in the game for me, Brett, for it to go well. And I mean, every one of these days, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about it, not necessarily even working on it, but thinking about it, right? And yeah, I'll be nervous on the morning. Even if I prepped, I'll be really nervous because I care about it a lot, you know?
Yeah. Well, and this is something that, and I think, events never go perfect. And this is relevant because people also, aside from wanting to create online platforms or podcasts or go out and speak, they often reach out to us about how to run events. And it is something that, like you alluded to, people, like when you see people at an event connecting or really digesting them, it's almost like eating a good meal. That's when you know it's going well. Yeah. There's a satiation that seems to take place amongst the people presenting at it and the people interacting as guests, right? They feel like this is very relevant information for me. And that's when you're the happiest as somebody that coordinates an event, because, you know, for me, I just feel like there's way more superficial, idealistic stuff out there than ever before. And people are more tired of it than ever before. Nobody wants to go to like the 10X, you know, whatever, I'm in a Learjet and super special secrets of the world-class performance specialist. It's all horse shit, you know,
and change the agenda. So
yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, and so I get that. And for people that don't know, let's act like the everyday listener is kind of ignorant, because I do think it's important to lay this out for folks. For you, when you're planning an event, what are the things that go into it? Of course, there's coordinating speakers and picking dates, so you don't need to go into that. But what are some of the behind the scenes things that you have to manage? Because this is good information for people.
Yeah, the logistics, the organization, speakers, travel, dinners, all that is a given, right? Like, you know, the hospitality and thinking around that. But what I learned from London last year, and what I've learned from any event that I find interesting, where I don't leave after an hour because I'm bored, is, like in Ireland we say having the crack, right? Not, the crack, CRAIC, not crack. And it's more about people that are just not so stiff. Everyone's a bit more relaxed. Everyone's a bit more chill. Arrogance was left at the door. So I think if you can create a space, and it doesn't matter at what level, if you can create a space where there's an energy of, we're actually all here for a reason, we actually care, we're here to try to learn something, there's a humility around the people that are there, then it's going to be pretty cool anyway, right? The content will take care of itself, because you've got a room of people that want to be there, they're actually interested, they're probably going to contribute, and they'll all have something to contribute, no matter who they are. And so I really reflected a lot last year, and I thought about, okay, a space where there's space to chat. I thought about, like, what's it look like in terms of orientation of a room? I thought about, like, fresh air between breaks. I thought about all that stuff because it relaxes people, and it takes, it puts people at ease. And therefore, everyone will get a whole lot more from it. So, I mean, you hear about like networking breaks and coffee moments and the water cooler. Yeah, but how can you actually nurture that through the day, and what does that look like? And I don't have all the answers, but it's definitely what I'm really trying to think about a lot for mine. That, and I think, Brett, the other thing I've thought about a lot, and for people thinking about events, the time of the content of your conference, call it, is great. But what do you do before and after it, or the next day, or the week after? And I mean, we didn't do a good enough job of that last year. I've really thought about it this year. So again, how can we have the crack in the morning and in the evening, and even the next morning, so that people feel like, I didn't expand my network, I made some friends. I actually got to learn a little bit more about someone, not just their job title. And I think that's really, really important, because the world we're in now, when people can talk human and actually have that moment, I think is pretty special. So I think about that a lot with my one.
No question. When did you say this event is?
The 28th of October, a Tuesday.
This year.
This year. In a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
In a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, and to ground that, if you don't mind, do you mind me sharing a bit of, like, on our end, let's having a discussion about the things that we put into it.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Like we're doing one the first weekend of October next year. Right. So I think that's the 3rd and the 4th. And to even speak to what you're mentioning, right? The first things that we think about is, as you mentioned, of course, there's dates, there's the speakers, there's the little environmental nuances like fresh air breaks, what have you. But you also have to broadly consider, are we going to do sponsors? How am I going to pay? Where's this budget going to come from? Right. Like, we have to figure out, some sponsors want to be paid in different, or some people want to be paid in different ways.
Yeah.
Some might want a speaking fee. Yeah. Some might take a reduced speaking fee, plus they want to sell their book. Some might want to do this, that, what have you. And then you've got to think about how to guide the presenters while also giving them autonomy.
Yeah.
But we both know the pain of, and this isn't poking holes. We've all done this, right? Like we can always all improve. But there's some presenters that you can give them 60 minutes and they wax philosophical for 20 to 30. And then you realize, oh man, you're so great. And they are, but they haven't given actionable content, right? Or you can say, well, I want to give them 45 and leave room for questions, but then you might end up rushing your speaker and then nobody asks questions. Yeah. So whether you're going to do panels, this, that, event spaces, most people don't realize this. You can pay anywhere from, we used to do event spaces where it was $800 to $1,000 a day. Okay. Or sometimes you might do a Marriott or hotel ballroom where it can end up being $15,000 for the weekend. And are you going to serve meals? And people don't understand it can create quite the heart attack even to just get this thing going. And
multiple heart attacks.
Right. And then on top of that, you have to figure out how to market it in a world that has gotten louder and dumber without you having to be like, hey, if you don't come to this conference, you're going to die. Here's 5 reasons you need it. Yeah. But you also like it's so tricky and people don't understand all the layers. And this isn't meant to talk people out of it. It's meant to just help people appreciate what goes into this and hopefully coax them into supporting events like this, because otherwise they don't understand the risk people like you and I and so many others might take when we're not sitting there with 38 sponsors, and there's no skin in the game. It's scary. It's like supporting small business owners in today's day and age. That's more important than ever, isn't it?
It's a big risk, right? Like not even the financial, but just you want it to all work out, right? And even I remember last year, the time didn't really work perfectly. And the last 2 who came over from the States had half the time to get through what was probably going to be the most interesting session. And then, you're kind of watching the clock the whole time going, what a shame. No Q&A here. And everyone's rushing out. So I think, there's, I've learned the importance of having a checklist and actually trying to find something that can help you stick with a checklist. Otherwise you miss loads of things. Like, are you having tables? Do you need this? And like to your point, like if you have sponsors, are they supplying food or is it a money thing? So there's so many moving parts. But what I would say was it's so hard, and I don't know if I'm going to do another one, right? It's also really energizing. And I mean, last year I loved it. I want to feel it again. And I know I'm not the only one saying that. That's why we're doing it again. But it's hard. And there'll be a few pints drank that evening after it. But if anyone's interested about events, check with Brad. He's one of the OGs. And if I can help, hit me up. But I don't have all the answers yet.
Right. Well, nobody does. I mean, that's like, I personally don't care for golf. I appreciate it as a sport or what have you. But, a friend of mine's deeply passionate about golf. And one of the things he talks about is you'll never play the perfect game. Yeah. Right. And I think that's the thing people need to recognize is, when you do an event or a workshop or anything like that, the goal is never to have the perfect event. You might start off with a beta, a proof of concept, keep it small. And then you realize this worked, that didn't, all those things. And so for us, like we always just say, let's keep this grassroots. We limit our stuff for even this big event next year. It's going to be like 50 to 100. That's it. For our speaker school and our other workshops, sometimes we go 5 to 15 and that's our model. And so I think a lot of people also have to be realistic about what their model is. If you want to run a 500 person event, that's fine, but that's fundamentally different and you're going to get a different kind of interaction. What turned me off, and I'd love to know, you got to give a hot take on something. All right. You can't be liked by everybody, David. So I'll put myself on the spitter first and then you go. But what the type of events that turn me off at this stage in my life, and I don't mind speaking at them, I'm just not going to pay for them with my money, is the super cheap conferences with 12 to 15 rotating door speakers, where it's just information thrown at you, very little interaction. I just don't want to do that. But I remember coming up as a strength coach, that would often be the thing. It's, and I know it's going to make people mad. I'm just being honest. 65 to $100, 15 speakers. They all get an hour. There's barely an interaction. Halfway through the second day, people are falling asleep in the back row or they've left. And really most of the audience is only there to passively network, not really engage. I'll never pay for, I don't care how cheap that is. That to me is like eating fast food. It's not of use to me.
Yeah, but that's because you've probably been to a few, right? And you've fallen asleep at a few and you've got, I better leave early or not go, right? I can relate. How many sports med, football medicine, soccer conferences have I gone to? And I mean, back in the day, early 20s, mid 20s, I was like, this is all I want to have. This is it. Feed me more, right? I love these Whoppers, right? I love the Big Mac. But now, no way. Couldn't do it. Couldn't sit through an hour. And I think it's not because the person up there doesn't know what they're talking about.
No.
It's because the style, it's the delivery, it's the lack of humor, it's the lack of the moments in between. It's just so lecture oriented, and like they're reading from a book, right? And I think, Brett, like, to your point, right, not everyone can hold the floor and speak like you, right?
Well, you give me too much credit.
Yeah, no,
have you even seen me speak?
That's about it, though. But I mean, but if you go to these conferences we're talking about, like, they haven't all learned. They haven't had a podcast like you, or they haven't run workshops, so they don't know if they're doing a good job, right? So in fairness to these people, they've probably never been coached. They've probably spent time in a clinical lab. They've maybe published papers. Does that mean they can actually chat and connect and draw something from an audience? Probably not. But I mean, it's for new grads to figure it out for themselves too, you know? Do they like
100%?
Do they like the fast food, or do they want something different? Maybe they want a bit of both.
Right.
No,
yeah, 100%. Some people like mumble rap and they want to twerk, and then other people actually want to get deep into the lyrics and understand double entendres. It's your choice. Which brings me to my next point. How did you because you deliver in so many formats, digitally, live, in person, you have to be so many different versions of yourself, but all of them authentic versions. Talk to me about how you improved your ability to manage your tone, your delivery style, your level of engagement. Maybe lead with some mistakes. Are there any things that you used to do just atrociously?
Edited a lot of my podcast.
Tell me, get into it.
I just said it there, right? I mean, the amount of times that I would have heard myself say, oh, really? So those filler words, I had a podcast years ago, Brett, right? You were on it. And when I was listening back, I remember going, oh my God, I said, oh yeah, 17 times. Let's edit that out of that 42-minute slot, right? So I was lucky that I had a podcast. So I got to get real time, immediate feedback as to, Jesus, I sounded really boring there. Like, oh my God, my pitch didn't change at all. Or, God, I was too dry, or I didn't even crack a joke, or I kept saying the same thing, or I didn't like pause enough. So it was good. I hadn't had that experience before. I mean, I'd spoken at conferences, Brett, right? Dave, speak at the sports medicine conference, great. And I might have thought I was good, but who knows, right? And I mean, people might have said it was great, but that might have been the same people that are going to those fast food, right? So who knows? It was, I think, for me, the podcast journey and listening back to me and others who I thought were really good speaking in front of an audience and studying them and going, oh my God, I have so much more room to improve here and I'm miles off. And so now, not that I listen to myself a whole lot now, but I probably think a little bit more naturally, obviously, about how do I need to talk here? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Or God, I'm still doing that. And sometimes I'll catch myself and I go, Jesus, I'm doing it again. That is terrible. So I think that helped me a lot. But I also think I would say to a lot of people, if you're trying to get confidence speaking in front of people, try it if you can, obviously, but also study people that are really good. Look at Vin Yang; he's hilarious, right? Look at listen to people that actually are good at it and try to understand why you think they're good. What is it about them that you think is good? And is there anything of that you can kind of model and practice and have it go? Otherwise, you're never going to improve.
Yeah, well, and I think too, and the only sandbox I'll get on, and then turn back to you, is most people just don't get coaches on this, and that's why we started Speaker School, right? Just like you have outputs that you started to solve problems for other people, but then the challenge I pose to certain folks is, there's always a certain amount of folks every year that will be like, oh yeah, but it's too expensive or whatever, but then they're reaching out saying, I'd love to make $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, speaking instead of getting paid peanuts to speak or not speaking at all, and I just respectfully say back to them, if you're not willing to invest, $799 or $800 to get speaker training, why would you expect other people to pay you thousands to go speak?
Yeah.
That's just not how that works. That's like somebody saying, I'm not going to try to be a better actor or invest in acting classes or anything else, but I want to be in multi-million-dollar films. You're like, or an athlete who doesn't want to practice. It's just absurd. And the reality is more people just have to put skin in the game and realize that it doesn't matter whether it's you or me or somebody that's been on a million TED stages or somebody that gets paid hundreds of thousands to speak. Everybody has something to work on. And that's what you almost have to fall back in love with. You have to fall back in love with that humility of, I'm not going to be perfect. And that's not the point of speaking. That's not the point of it, is it?
No. And I think that's such a big thing for a lot of people in my world, right? And in your world, sports medicine, physios, you name it, sports performance, we're never coached on it, right? Now you're doing a bit on your side, fair play, but the amount of people I see that are just scared shitless of speaking in front of 3 people, never mind 10, or can't even articulate a thought or get something from paper out there, will work in it. Or why would you not spend a bit of money because it's important, it's going to help you in your career. So I think I spent a lot of money on it. I still spend a lot of money on it. I still try to figure out how I can get better because it's so massively important that if you can't get out there and actually speak and even understand who's good, you're shooting yourself in the foot,
Yeah, no, I agree. David, one other thing I think that you're exceptional at, and, talking to you is kind of like holding a warm cup of coffee. You're very good at creating and nurturing relationships. It doesn't matter if they're new relationships, doesn't matter if it's personal or professional. I know this is a broad question because there's no way to ask it in a way that's not necessarily broad, but what are some fundamental principles that you really utilize beyond the obvious that guide how you go and try to create new relationships or even just strengthen current ones? Because I think that's a skill that I understand people will say, oh, AI will do it better, especially when it's AGI. But really AI is, as you know, right, it's more good at mimicking empathy. It's good at mimicking human responses. And even if it knows quintessentially how to do everything like we do, it's still not going to be the same. So it's a fundamental skill that people need to refine and really double down on. But what are some approaches you use and things you really believe in that are fundamental to building and refining relationships?
You have to be interested in people.
That's a big one.
We're laughing, but a lot of people aren't.
That's what I mean.
A lot of people aren't. It's like people listening. I wasn't always interested in people, and I was a physio, right? I had, you think you'd be interested in patients. Again, I had an advantage. I had to, at least look like I was most of the time and listen. But I think you have to be interested in other people and actually let them talk and not let it always be about you.
Or what you want out of it. Because, God, there's so many users. They think that's the purpose of a relationship so that they can play the long game and later on ask you for something while never really showing up for you.
Yeah. I think another thing I really do try to think about is what in their world might be important for them and how can you figure that out early. So, and that could be something in, someone's background. Yours is kind of blurred, right? Or it might be something you're wearing, or it might be something you've said subtly. And if you can pick it up, that might be something that you go, I feel that's pretty important. Like that's, so I'll look at your t-shirt now and I'll kind of go, adaptable. Kind of interesting. What's that mean? Tell me more. Now I know, but I think that's a huge thing. So I think if you're speaking with people, nurturing a conversation, or it's the first time, observe. What do you see?
Yeah.
And then the other thing too, right? And it's an Irish trait, Brett, and you're good at it. You're good, right? You're good at this. And people mightn't always think it. Don't take yourself so seriously. And I mean, I in Ireland we say take the piss. I'm lecturing right now in a college, right? UCD.
Oh.
But I always take the piss out of myself early, all the time.
You got to.
But it's the most important thing, because then if you're a 19-year-old, you go, Jesus, he doesn't, he actually doesn't know it all. And you'll actually listen to me, right? And you won't feel so intimidated or whatever, or nervous, and you might speak up. So I think if you're trying to nurture a connection, like, just don't take yourself so seriously. And can you laugh at yourself? And what is that? Like, I joke a lot about different aspects of me all the time with different people because it just breaks down walls.
Yeah.
And ultimately it's a huge thing because, you know, you'll get to a better conversation. So those are, if you want to call them tactics, they're things I think about. Actually be interested in people, ask actually interesting questions, listen, look at someone, observe them, nothing complicated here, and try to just take the piss of yourself a little bit more. You know, I for one, when I'm going to the States a lot, Brett, I'm in the States, as you know, at work, I'll always play the Irish card, right? The obvious card, right? But I'll go, yeah, I was a late one, you know, and so I'll either talk in an Irish turn of phrase, or I'll make a crack about my red beard, or I'll say something that just is disarming, and it doesn't affect my confidence, right? And it's
Sure.
a genuine thing, but it makes a huge difference. And that could be to anyone. That could be to an athlete. It could be to a performance scientist. It could be to a girlfriend. It could be to your son. So I think it's something we can always be thinking about, you know?
Yeah, no, excellent points. And I think what you hit on too is people oftentimes want to ask a question like, hey, what should I say to get somebody to open up? How can I get them to trust me more? And I say, quit thinking about it as a script.
Yeah.
And this drives me nuts because right now there are some people on Instagram that are like communication experts that they teach people, oh, say this if you want this, say this if you want that, as if it's that easy. What I try to say, and what it seems like you're alluding to too, is no, it's about creating the conditions necessary that can help them open up. That can be, you know, the environment. Are you going to get a cup of coffee? Are you asking questions? Are you doing things that make them feel more comfortable, make them feel valued, make them feel understood? And that goes so far beyond what you say. There's so many other intangibles around that. Sometimes it's even just what you share. Or I was reading the gentleman that does Diary of a CEO. Yeah. He's like, when people meet with me, you know, all shoes off, it looks like a living room. We try to pay attention to the temperature in the room. And those are ethical, functional manipulations because you want people to open up. When we run our speaker school, it's going to be hosted at my home. This one's at my living room. It's small, it's intimate, and it's fun to see the difference where if we have an event where people have folding chairs, and there's a time for that, we do those events too. But in speaker school, they can come in and they can sit on my couch or they can sit on this stool. And they're actually in my living room with a coffee machine right there. And it's just the first thing they say is, I wasn't expecting this. Yeah. And it creates this sense of ease when I say, okay, if you want to refine your message, you want to open up, you want to be able to get out of your own head, it starts with getting more comfortable and not coming from a place of perceived threat or formality. Let's get loose here. Yeah. So it seems like that's what you're saying. And I love that you said, don't be scared to make fun of yourself or take the piss out of it. Don't be scared to do this, that, because that is creating conditions beyond just what you say or some simple script where people start to feel like I can be more comfortable around this person because he genuinely or she cares, or there's something different about them that seems to coincide that they want me to go deeper.
Yeah, you took the word. You know, if I think about any times when I'm not having a good conversation with my wife, right? It happens a lot. It's ultimately because she probably doesn't feel that I care, or that I'm just not listening, or that I've moved on and I'm doing something else. And happened last night. She's working on something at the moment, and are you even listening to me? And I went, I am, but I wasn't, right? I wasn't really listening to her enough. And I think it's what you said is, you know, we all want to feel cared for. We all want to feel listened to, and we all want to feel recognized. As much as we say we don't, we do. No matter if you're a 5-year-old, a 30-year-old, or a 60-year-old, right? Like, my dad wants to feel respected, cared, want to feel recognized, listened to. So do I. So does my little man who's only 8. So does my wife. So I think it's what you said about the care thing. And like, if someone, and we're as humans, we can sense it. If someone doesn't give a shit and doesn't really care, you're already trying to pick up ground that you've lost. And it sounds, again, it sounds basic, but it's not. It's everything, I think, if you're trying to build relationships.
Well, again, and we got to get away from all that. I mean, there's so many things that sound basic, but are the crux of successful life. Like, keeping track of your finances, brushing your teeth, getting better sleep, exercising. All those things sound basic, but they're the fundamentals to having a happy, healthy, successful life in many respects. And so that's what's scary about today, right? Is people don't want things that sound basic and simple. They want the secret and optimized hack and what have you. Now, I have a selfish question. What makes you feel listened to? And this is, it might not seem highly tactical to you, but there are people that are going to watch us on YouTube and listen to and they're going to think, man, I'm probably not always listening the best I can. So what are some signals or things that make you feel listened to? So if somebody meets you in the future or somebody like you, right, they can maybe get beyond some false positives and know what to look for to ensure that individual feels valued, heard, and listened to.
Exactly what I just did. So if people are watching video, by you asking a question that I thought was a good question, I postured up a little different, right? So I think if you've asked something that you've shown interest in me for whatever reason, I'll probably position myself even a little bit differently and become a little bit more engaged and a bit more present and a bit more locked in and definitely not distracted. So I think, that example yesterday, what was missing for me to, what happened in that interaction with my missus, why it didn't quite work. I need to think about it. But I think for you, for people listening or trying to engage with different people, signals for me would be, if someone's asked me something and they're making good eye contact, right? But also if they've made me really, really kind of lean in, and then they'll get me to open up. So I think, again, it's looking for those subtle sort of things, I think a thing for me too is I'm doing it now. When someone is asking me something that I feel is interesting or is making me think, I'll often look away, right? So I'll look away and I'll think for a minute. I'll go, oh, that's Jesus. He's made me really. That's a great question. Like that's a hard question to answer. So I think those are signals that we can all sort of spot. That would be one for me, right? So if someone is asking me something and they kind of see that little momentary glance, they know they've asked me something that's hitting me at a certain level. So,
that makes sense. How are you then, just as a father, how are you teaching that to your kids? Have you thought about, because it's not something that would be common. So you'd be forgiven if you're like, oh yeah, I haven't really thought about that. Or what are things, and maybe I'll ground it to go first just because I know I'm putting you on the spot. But one thing I try to do with Bronson is I say, like, if Bronson was meeting you today, I'd say, look Mr. Clancy in the eye, buddy, and say, nice to meet you, and if you were saying something to him periodically, I say, buddy, what did Mr. Clancy just say to you? Cause I know when he starts kind of getting in toddler mode, and it's not like I'm some drill sergeant that I'm like, you remember everything Mr. Clancy says. Right. But, what I tell him one day is somebody was saying something and they were just saying something nice about him. And I go, did you hear what he said, buddy? I go, so what are you saying? He goes, thank you. And I go, and how did that make you feel? And he goes, good. And I said, and that's why we listen to people, because, it makes them feel good. And you understand what it's like when somebody doesn't listen to you, don't you? And he's like, yeah. And I go, can you give a word to that? And he's like, sad. And so I try to help him kind of just lay in age appropriate terms, but still terms where I'm not infantilizing him, helping him understand how important it is to listen to something Mr. Clancy said. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I caught my little man doing something a week ago that, I wasn't proud of, and I caught him on it. I'm really proud of little Michael, right? I bring him to everything. He's 8. He's just turned 8, and I hold him to a standard, right? So I'm a tough dad. And one of his best friends from school was there at the door, rang the bell. We're in a neighborhood where he's got a lot of friends. He plays soccer with this kid, goes to school with him. And he opened the door, and my little man and he didn't even think about it. He didn't know any different. He's only 8, right?
Yeah.
But he was so dismissive. He was like, sorry, I'm having dinner. Like, and then he closed the door. And I just remember I spoke to my wife for a minute. I said, I want to bring that up with little man. And like, I've been there. And I remember speaking to Michael, and I said, Michael, he mightn't keep calling for you. And do you call for him? And how do you think he felt? Like, have you thought about that? I didn't really think about it, Daddy. And I went, Well, just, he called over to you to go out and play with you, and you kind of gave a bit of an excuse and you closed the door really, really quickly. And he probably didn't feel great about it. And he mightn't call to you again tomorrow. And you're friends with him, aren't you? And it really made me feel, I didn't want to have that conversation, but I wanted to have it because I think it was an important conversation, because I might have to have it again, but I mightn't have to have it a third time. And it was really about him trying to understand what you said. That, and that little example, I think, can be extrapolated to so many different areas, right? A player interaction, a coach interaction, a spouse interaction, when you shut off because it's not important for you right there, but it's important for someone else, and it might be important for you the next day. So, and I've been there. I've done it a lot. I do it on the phone too much. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the foundation of coaching, consulting, managing, leading, guiding, teaching, all those things, is establishing that connection. And it's the thing that I think has gone far too long without being prioritized. And then it shows in people's professionalism, lack thereof. It shows in the way we build or don't build relationships and prioritize them. I mean, there's so many things that are transactional, and I don't think most people are as self-aware about those. And I think a big part of that too is, we live in a world where, let's say you, with your expertise, you're teaching somebody about a different tactic related to physiotherapy or anything like that. To many of them, that doesn't feel like a personal affront. But if you give somebody a tip on communication or coaching or something like that, that can feel like they take that personally. And they shouldn't, because that's the medium in which coaching or any service that's provided is enacted. It's the water, as my friend Scott Livingston says, it's the water it swims in, And sorry, you look like you had something to say. I didn't want to. Do you have some on the tip of your tongue?
I knew the name, but I liked your analogy. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give him credit for that. And it's why, frankly, like, I love conversations like this. And I think podcasts like this have so much more of a shelf life than, if somebody just gets you on and only focused on your expertise as a physio or only your expertise as a consultant. I mean, think about what you've talked about. I know you're hard on yourself, and maybe somebody that you care about will listen and hate me for not going in a certain direction. But you've touched on parenting, consulting, running an event, self-doubt, self-criticism, overcoming your own limitations, and how to build authentic relationships. That's the shit that lasts for 100 years. That's the stuff that's not on every soundbite ridden podcast that's out there. So that's just me. Hopefully, it comes across as a genuine thank you, because it is. And then it's also me wanting to give you a runway here for last thoughts and moments for you to be very selfish in the positive context. And I want to address either something you feel like you never get asked, or it could be something you just want to share and say, or it can be a piece of your work you want to promote. It could be all three, but you get final words, because you have been so gracious and you have gone a lot of places that are going to give people a lot of value throughout their lives.
I'm going to appreciate it. Thanks. I'm going to say something that I think about a lot. What's helped me a lot, it's not advice, because, you can't give advice, right? But you are the advice monster. Michael Bungay Stanier taught me that. If you're doing well in any way, right, however you define what good is, don't do it on your own. So I would challenge people that if you're doing something or something's going well, who can you teach it to? And that might be your 8-year-old, or it might be your business partner, or it might be another strength coach, or it might be a player. It kind of feeds into your world of coaching, right? But my dad and mom have done it to me, and it means a lot to me. That's why I do it with my kids. That's why I take pride in it. Pass the ladder down. So that's my message, right? And, leave breadcrumbs. Don't be so busy and self-absorbed that you don't give a shit about others, because otherwise you're not going anywhere. So, like, I do believe, I said it last year at the Tate, I'll say it again at my conference on the 28th, and I believe it, like a rising tide lifts all boats, JFK. I really believe it. I don't think there's enough people that actually want other people to do well. They want to do well, and we all want to do well.
Yeah.
But we can also want other people to do well. So I would challenge people to create the opportunity to help others along the way, whatever that looks like. That might be small, it might be big. I don't know what it looks like, but think about it, because it will come back to you. And I mean,
Yeah.
right now in my world, you know, I've got loads of challenges with my little girl. And so when people can help me and support me and pass the ladder, they're going to get the best of me.
Yeah.
So I think that's my message.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the vulnerability, and not the feigned vulnerability, the actual vulnerability of going places that I know, you know, through our conversations, you haven't always gone on other podcasts. And hopefully you feel like, you know, it's been a good experience and a genuine platform to share that, you know, because I think that's another episode that we could do in the future. You know, I always want to, and people should expect this and they should respect it. I want to give you a chance. Where can we go to support you? Websites, links, books, whatever matters most to you. Pitch it now. Our audience cares. Okay. So skip all the Irish bullshit about not wanting to be self-aggrandizing or self-promoting. Be self-promoting right now and tell us where we can go to support what you are doing.
Yeah, you know, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. David Clancy, you'll find me on LinkedIn quite easy if you throw my name in there. Nextlevelgroup.com, the nextlevelgroup.com, NXT. You can kind of find my business there, what I'm doing. But I have a big event, 28th of October, right? Essentialskills.ie. If you can't come, that's okay. There'll be a platform afterwards where I'm going to try to get money to come in because I'm donating to 2 charities, right? So there's been tickets that have been gifted, but there'll also be a little bit of space after it, and we can put it in the show notes. But for people, there's even people coming from the States, fair play. But for people that can't attend, that's a big thing. It means a lot for me. It has to be a good event, but I want to be able to do good work for me, for my family after it.
Wonderful.
So yeah, that's another thing you can support. And, you know, by buying my book, know that every single penny, you need to hear it, every penny that comes in my bank account from that book goes to the same 2 charities. So Children's Health, Down Syndrome Ireland. So anyone who's contributed to that book, to my event, that's where all the profits go. They don't go to my pocket. Not that I don't need them, but that's not why I'm doing them.
Appreciate that. That's very cool. Yeah, we did the same with Leukemia Lymphoma Foundation and Alzheimer's Association for Conscious Coaching. I think that's always a cool thing to do. Well, David, I appreciate it, man. You know, it's been a great conversation, and I thank you for your authenticity, and hopefully you enjoyed it as well. And we'll talk to each other again soon.
Thanks, Brett. Good to see you, man.
All right, folks, please make sure to support folks like David. Jump on to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, rate the podcast. It's the way that we don't get swallowed up by the Rogans or Dak Shepherds or the NPRs or the million other large podcasts out there. These platforms want to know what you're listening to. So please, please, please rate the podcast if you're enjoying it, and we'll talk to you soon.